Thank you, Rita. All right, and Charles Darwin socks, by the way. So I am a tremendous science nerd, and I have always been a tremendous science nerd. When I was a kid, I had Steve Irwin posters on my wall. I spent 2 hours as a 9-year-old sifting through the grass in my backyard looking for the number of species I could find, and the answer was 73. And when most kids were playing PlayStation at 11, I was having my mom quiz me on the Latin names of sharks from a shark book. So huge, tremendous nerd. And the reason for that is the reason that I love science is the story science tells us. And I think that the story science tells us is the greatest story we've ever had as a species, the story of how the universe got here, the earth, life, and man. And it's that I'm hopefully going to share with you in 8 minutes today with far too many excited words and glossing over a billion years here and there. So here we go. 14 billion years ago, we have the Big Bang, or roughly 14 billion years ago, the Big Bang. And so the universe as we know it comes into existence from an infinitesimal speck in a fraction of an instant. And if that's hard to fathom for you, don't worry. It's hard to fathom for everyone, including astronomers. And I promised you some glossing, so we're going to skip 9 billion years to our solar nebula, the birthplace of our solar system and our sun. And so when the Big Bang happened, it created a few elements, hydrogen, helium, lithium, the lightest elements. But where do the rest come from? Oxygen, nitrogen, uranium, and more. Well, when stars get bigger, they form heavier elements in their cores. And when they explode, so our sun is going to heave and then wither, but huge stars explode in supernova, the most cataclysmic event in the entire cosmos, where one star outshines 100 billion. And when they do this, they scatter their enriched guts across the cosmos. And so literally the atoms that make up your body were forged in the heart of a dying star, which I think is pretty badass. So we have these heavy elements, and they seeded this gas cloud, our nebula, and it starts spinning and getting denser and bigger until it ignites. And so the center of our sun goes nuclear. And so imagine all the nuclear bombs ever dropped in the history of humanity going off every second for 9 billion years. And that is a sun. That is our star. And so around this massive gravity, we have all the dust and particles that are left over. And they start circling the sun. And they get bigger, and they smash into each other and get bigger and bigger. And eventually we get planets like the Earth, including our Earth, which is the story we're telling now. And so the Earth is formed, and it's this hellscape. It's called the Hadean Era. It is literally fire and brimstone and lava, and early on in its history, we are pretty sure that a planet the size of Mars smashes into it, blows off a huge chunk of its crust, and that crust recongeals and forms our moon. And so the early days of our Earth, we have this sulfurous hellscape covered in lava being blasted by meteorites, and this moon that's the exact same blood red moon going around us. It's this really interesting time to think about the universe. And so the crust eventually cools, and the gas that comes out of this early Earth, well, it has H2O in it. It has water vapor. And so that water vapor rains for millions of years and forms our oceans. And so we go from this hellscape to this hard crust ocean world, and life starts fairly early on. Now, we're not sure how life exactly started, whether it came from comets or here. But in the last 70 years, we've been able to take submersibles to the bottom of the ocean. And when we go there, we thought it was going to be this barren wasteland, and instead it's teeming with life. Bacteria, 6'2" worms, giant sharks, the most amazing creatures. And in one of our journeys, we found this place that we call the Lost City. And the Lost City is an alkaline vent, and you don't need to know what that is. Just think of it. It's 180-foot gleaming white spires with these superheated chemicals coming out from the inner core of the Earth upwards. And the conditions around these vents form the molecules necessary for life. So maybe life started there, and I urge you to look up the Lost City. And so we know life starts in the ocean, and for the first 3 billion years of life on Earth, it is single cells, it is bacteria-like things. And 3 billion years is hard to fathom, so try and think of 1,000 years if you can. Well, 1,000,000 years is 1,000,000 years, and 1,000,000,000 years is 1,000,000,000 years. And so for this unfathomable amount of time, bacteria rule. And they still rule today. If you go to the bottom of the deepest ocean or mine shaft, you will find bacteria. Crack open rocks in Antarctica, and there are bacteria. And on our bodies, there are 10 times more bacterial cells than human cells. But back then, they had no competition. It was just them. And after several billion years, one of them hits upon this neat party trick where it eats another bacteria but doesn't digest it. It absorbs it and absorbs its power. So imagine if you ate a chicken and grew wings and feathers, or ate a steak and grew horns. It's like that, but much, much cooler. And so now we have complicated cells. And these complicated cells, well, they team up together and they start forming the organisms we know today: fungi, animals, plants. And so very simple forms at this point. And about 600 million years ago, the Earth, not for the first time, goes through Snowball Earth. So it's an entire glacial ball. It looks like a giant snowball in our solar system. And when we get past this, through volcanoes melting the ice, we get this profusion of life. It used to be very simple, and now it gets amazingly complicated. Things with 7 eyes and 20 legs and 6-foot sea scorpions that haunt the bottom of the ocean. And it's this amazing time to be in the world. And life starts coming out onto land, and we get dragonflies the size of seagulls and millipedes the size of cows, and it's incredible. And then things with backbones that formed back after the Snowball Earth was over, they come out onto land about 370 million years ago, and we get amphibians, and we get 20-foot salamanders, and then we get dinosaurs. And I think all kids instinctively know this, but dinosaurs are the coolest thing ever. Really. The world for 150 million years was ruled by titanic reptiles. Sauropods, 150 feet long that graze 30 feet high in the trees, hunted by T-Rex, a predator that weighs 7 tons and has teeth the size of bananas. When Alan Grant in Jurassic Park takes his glasses off and gets out of the Jeep and nearly faints, I nearly faint. It is amazing to think of. And then it ends. In what is a plotline out of a B horror movie, a giant killer space rock hits the Gulf of Mexico, vaporizes everything underneath it, sets the forests of the world aflame, super tsunamis, the greatest earthquake in the history of the Earth, and sends ash that blots out the sun. And except for birds, which we now know are dinosaurs, the dinosaurs' reign is over. And so these little monsters that were underneath their feet for 100 million years, well, they get their chance to evolve, to change, to proliferate. And we get amazing forms like whales and bats and giraffes and platypus. Like, what's a platypus? It's amazing. And some of these mammals, they take to the trees and they develop color vision so they can see ripe fruit, and they develop binocular eyes so they can judge distances and they don't fall out of the tree when they jump. And some of these get bigger, and some of them get more intelligent, live in bigger groups, and we get primates. We get apes. We get us. And I think that's one of the greatest things science has ever taught us, is that we are not separate from the natural world. We are part of it. We are apes. And about 6 million years ago, we break off from our last common ancestor. We break off and forms chimps and us. And there's not just one species of human. There are many, 20, 30. There were other species of human as recently as 15,000 years ago in Indonesia. It's this amazing profusion of hominids. And us, our species, Homo sapiens, only arrives on the scene 300,000 years ago. And so if the beginning of life is there, the end of my fingertips there, and the present day is here at the end of this fingertip, 300,000 years is the equivalent of the shaving off my middle fingernail. We are newbies, we are babies on the world stage. But in that time, we have crossed jungles, deserts, mountains. We have developed art, music, culture. We have made cave paintings and amazing habitations around the world. We set sail on boats into the ocean, having no idea what was on the other side, simply because we could. We found Australia and New Zealand and the Polynesian Islands. We are an amazing species. 12,000 years ago, we developed agriculture, so we don't have to live off the land and the sea anymore. We can live in one spot and proliferate and come up with new jobs, basically, so we don't all have to hunt and gather. 6,000 years ago, we developed writing, so now we can transmit ideas across centuries to different generations, to different bands of people, and our knowledge base grows. And then, in the last few hundred years, we developed science. We developed the greatest tool we've ever had for probing the universe, for admitting our ignorance and seeking to find solutions, and for understanding the world around us. And everything changes. We go from 100 million people to 8 billion in a few hundred years. We provide enough food for all of them. Hopefully. We have enough food. We don't necessarily distribute it good, but we have enough food. We increase our life expectancy from 35 to 70 years. We map the world, go to the bottom of the ocean, send probes to the outer cosmos, and we put a man on the moon. In our pockets, we have a device that has access to all the information ever collected in the history of humanity. And if you use it as a phone, in a few clicks, you can talk to people in Australia, Sierra Leone, Guyana, and even Scarborough. You can do all this because of science. And so that's why I sifted through the grass as a kid. That's why I had the Steve Irwin posters, and that's why I asked for the Latin names of sharks. Because I find this story the most amazing thing we've ever done, the most amazing thing we've ever found out. And I want to know about it, I want to be a part of it, and I want to share it. And so thank you for letting me share it today.